I'm your host, Tommy Ashley. Listen to the Inside Carolina podcast sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt, JohnnyT-Shirt.com. The 40 Club is back. It's been a few weeks. Joey Powell is with me. If you're watching on YouTube, you need to be, because we've got a former Tar Heel with us. I'm not going to spoil it, but if you're on YouTube, you recognize him. You have to. Looks the exact same that he looked the day he walked on campus in Chapel Hill. A little bit older, not much. If you're listening on iTunes, sort of rate us and review us and subscribe and all that. Do the same on YouTube. I'm going to kick it to Joey Powell so he can introduce the latest 40 Club guest.
So we're going back a little bit, and I'm actually happy to do it. We've been dealing with all these young guys recently, but now we're going back to one of my contemporaries, which don't take that the wrong way, sir. 2003 to 2006, this gentleman racked up 2,393 yards. 24 touchdowns. He actually had a 244-yard toting day against Wake Forest in 2003. Clover, South Carolina, stand up for the franchise. Ronnie McGill. Ronnie, how are you, buddy?
I am fantastic, and I do not look the same as when I got on there because I'm about 50 pounds heavier.
Hey, look, life happens, brother. Life happens to us. We can't really, what is it? Time is undefeated, right? So,
most of the time, yes.
Look, man, we're glad you joined us, and I was really appreciative, one, that you were willing to do this, but I want to make sure I give a shout out to Stacy for helping set this up from the Patriots PR office. So big thanks to him for making this happen. I know those guys are getting absolutely beaten to death right now, so I'm glad he made time for us back here in Chapel Hill.
As am I. I told him. He asked me if I wanted to do it. I was like, Carolina, of course I want to.
Well, thank you. So let's jump right in, man. I mean, guy coming from Clover, South Carolina. I know you had everything you needed back there. There was no reason for you to ever leave home. But what made you come to Chapel Hill?
Well, my recruiting process was a little different because I played in the wing T since I was, I think, 9 years old. So from Little League all the way up to high school, the team that I played with basically tried to keep the same offense, and it was good for me when I was in Little League. But once I got to high school, they wanted me to play quarterback so I can touch the ball every single play since we were running the option. So my first 3 years, I was a quarterback and a safety, and I was getting recruited by some teams to play safety, but nobody at running back because nobody saw me play running back until my senior year. And once I moved back to running back is when I started getting a little bit more pub. But the only two schools that gave me offers before the very end of my senior year was App State and UNC. And I was kind of on the fence with UNC, and I had an unofficial visit at NC State.
Spill the beans now. You can't just do this. Let us hear.
I stopped in Chapel Hill because I was like, you know what, man, they've been recruiting me really, really hard. So let me just go in there and see if I like the campus and stuff. I went there. We walked around forever. I was late to NC State's official visit day. So then we came back and we stopped in Chapel Hill again, and I saw one of the Carolina Blue fire trucks, and I was like, man, this place is lovely.
A fire truck is what got you to Chapel Hill?
Well, the fire truck and the Carolina Blue street signs. I was like, something about it. I just fell in love with it. So we came back through, and I forgot what we ate at. I think we ate at Sutton's on the way there, but I can't remember where we ate on the way back. And I remember driving all the way back to Clover. The guy was asking the guy who was my Little League football coach, is basically like my father figure. Mm-hmm. He was asking me how I liked it, and I was like, I really like Chapel Hill. So we go through the whole year, and I didn't have very many offers. And I went to an All-Star game, the South Carolina All-Star game, and I broke the rushing record. And as soon as I got home, I had a bunch of offers. And Coach Powell called me, and he said, remember who were the first D1 team to offer you? But he didn't really have to tell me that because that was already something that I was thinking about. Like, nobody else really wanted to give me offers to play running back. So it just made it easy whenever it came time to make my decision of who was actually really loyal and
Yeah.
who was I high up on their list for. And basically it was Chapel Hill and App State. And App State was cool, but I fell in love with the actual town of Chapel Hill when I was there. It was like everybody says, everybody with the Patriots says the same thing. Like when you go to Chapel Hill and you visit, you just want to be there. So it was hard to say no to that when it came time to make my decision.
So what was the difference between Chapel Hill and Clover?
How big is Chapel Hill? Like 50, 60,000?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Depends on schools
If
in and out.
students
Right
are
now, it
there,
ain't very big.
Well, whatever Chapel Hill is, you subtract 2,000, and that's the difference between that and Clover. Clover's tiny. It's like the smallest. It's so small. And then once I got out of Clover, I got to Chapel Hill. It's just a different feel, diversity. I've never really been into big cities, so being in that town that was all based on the college was really good for me. My brother went to USC. I told him that was way too big. I didn't like being in Columbia. He started off at Clemson. That was out in the middle of nowhere, so that didn't get to me because that felt like Clover too. So Chapel Hill just kind of had everything that I was looking for. Big enough, but not too big. A lot of stuff to do around there. And so I just felt like it was a good fit for me.
I got you.
That was interesting. A couple of things. You said USC, and I was like, I don't remember him going to Southern California. And you mentioned Clemson, and you're right. Clemson's still out in the middle of nowhere.
It's in the middle of nowhere. So I took a visit there with what was it, like 5 of my friends. We got a van. They wanted me to come down, so I rented a van. We drove down. We were at a basketball game. We were like stretched out on the seats, and one of them looked at me and was like, "You ready to go?" And I was like, "Yep." So we started walking around the campus. We got back in the van, started to drive back to Clover. We got back. Nobody even mentioned like how Clemson was, and finally somebody was like, "How did you like it?" And I was like, "I didn't really like it." So.
Wow, how times have changed. Because
I know, it's so different, and when that also leads to one of the craziest stories was when we played Clemson my senior year. I think it was my senior year. When we were down there, we were pregame, and I was standing about the 50-yard line with my back to Clemson, and I was the farthest person behind everybody, and I was just watching everything go on, and I get a tap on my hip, and I don't know who it is, so I'm not turning around because I'm not really paying attention to him. And I hear in my ears like one of my worst decisions was making sure that you didn't come to Clemson. I turned around, it was Coach Bowden, and I was like, oh, that was actually kind of cool, but you missed me by 4 years.
Yeah, really.
That's a heck of a little side note.
Yeah.
So you were one of the last. I guess one of the last stars. You weren't one of the last guys recruited, but you were one of the last stars to play for Coach Bunning before he left. How much did you keep up with the program, or how did you stay? Again, you left school just like everybody else. You went and got a job, became an adult, went out into the real world. How much attachment did you keep with the football program or with the school once Coach Bunning left?
A ton. Well, a ton in different areas. I rehabbed a lot. So I talked to Scotty O, who was our head. He was the second in charge when I was there. So I talked to him for a pretty good amount. I talked to a few of the coaches. When Fedora was there, I was like really, really getting close to the coaches. When Butch was there, it was terrible for the guys who didn't play in the league. And I don't know how many guys you've had on here who didn't play in the league, but it was really rough. Like even for me, and I played 4 years. I started in all 4 years. I wasn't just started every single game, but I started in 4 years. I got invited to the combine.
Mm-hmm.
I had teams who wanted me to play, but my knee was just too bad, so I couldn't do it. And it was just like we weren't really a part of the program, but we were a part of the program. He was more interested in getting the guys around who were in the NFL who could basically like look good for the camera.
Right.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's we've talked to a lot that maybe had a cup of coffee in the league or didn't play at all. And that's interesting because there's a lot of guys, and I don't say this there's a lot of guys that think Butch was the greatest thing ever while they were there.
Yes.
But there's been a lot of people that have talked about, especially until really recently, that it wasn't really welcoming back.
It was fragmented.
Yeah, they love him, which I could see why they love him, because he was the guys who played for him. He gave them everything that they asked for and they wanted. But to me, and I'm not trying to be rude to Butch, and actually, yeah, and I like his son. I talked to his son for quite a while, but there was one time that okay. So another thing is, I have a really, really good friend who was my suite mate my freshman year when we were in Morrison South, and he's basically one of my best friends. His name's Jack Richmond. He lives in Nashville. Is he the one
that got you to gig with the Titans?
He is actually the one who introduced me to the guy that got me to gig with the Titans. Okay. So
the man does his research.
Small world.
So we went back to Chapel Hill, and it was me and him, and I remember requesting some credentials for something. I forgot what it was, but I didn't get them. So I go to the practice field to try to go to watch them practice. And I remember Coach Holliday coming over to me, and I love Coach Holliday to death. Like he's one of the people who absolutely looked out for me before I got there, when I got there, and after I got there. And he came over to me and just told me that the procedure was a little different now. And he was going to let me in because me and him had been tight. So he let me into practice. But I remember thinking, like, man, that was kind of messed up. Like, because I see all these other guys who I remember not being starters and not really having roles, but ended up in the NFL for different reasons. And they were all out there. So then when we get to the game, it's me and Jack sitting in the stands. And there was a girl who we went to school with, and she asked us to sit beside her. So I was sitting beside her, and we were talking, and somebody behind me recognized who I was, and he was like, "Why are you not on the sideline?" And I was like, "Well, they don't let me down there. So, I mean, I can't really go down there if he doesn't want me down there." So the game's over, and I remember we parked in front of the stadium, so I just needed to walk back through the facility to get back to our car. It was a nightmare. It was me and Jack trying to talk to the security guy, saying, "Hey, I'm not trying to come into the building. All I want to do is come from the field, from this point, from the tunnel, go through the hall, and then go to my car." It's like, I'm not planning on stopping anywhere.
Yeah.
So as he's talking to me, I see Larry Edwards walk behind him. And at this point, Larry was on the practice squad, I think, for the Colts. Mm-hmm. So he walks behind him, and he's like, "Hey, man, what's up, man?" And I'm like, "Nothing. I'm just trying to get to my car." Still can't do it. Security guy's like, "Well, I know who you are. You just recently played here, but it's just the rules. I can't let you through." So I'm like, "Okay." So about this time, Mr. James Spalding comes through, and he sees me, and he's like, "Oh, what are you doing out there?" Oh, he was my sponsor for my scholarship. So we had always been really, really tight. So he grabbed me and brought me through, and then I went out, and I was standing in the lobby, and I was sitting there because somebody, I forgot who it was, I told him I would see them after the game. So I'm sitting there, and Leah Murphy, I believe, was at the desk. And so I was talking to her, and Coach Steinbacher comes through and asks me what I'm doing. And I'm like, "I'm just sitting here. I'm just waiting because I can't go anywhere." And he kind of brings me through, and then he introduces me to, basically, it shows me everybody who I remember. So Andre Williams, who was my big brother when I first got there. We go see Coach Holliday. Like I said, love the guy. It was a lot of a hassle just to get into the game and then get from one point of the stadium to the other part of the stadium. So that's my experience with Butch. Was not very good at all. Now, when Fedora was there, I had decided that I wasn't going back to Chapel Hill until Butch wasn't there. Right. Not because I don't like him, just because I felt
was
like
different.
I was,
It was
It's
different.
a hassle. Yeah.
yeah, like if I just felt like I was asking for too much, and I was trying not to ask me anything. So Fedora was there, and the same thing happened. Like I'm sitting there, Coach Steinbecker comes in there again. He's like, "Oh, hey, what are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, I'm just waiting for." I think it was Daryl at the time. I was like, "I'm just waiting for Daryl because I'm gonna go up to video and I'm gonna see him for a second." And Coach was like, "Oh no, come on!" So he just grabs me and we just start walking through. He takes me up to the fourth floor. He's like, "This is Coach Fedora." I introduced myself to Coach Fedora. Coach Fedora's like, "Come on, you got to go meet the guys." So he takes me into the offensive meeting room where the coaches are meeting, and I meet all those guys. And then he takes me. He's like, "Andre, no," he was like, "Ronnie, have you seen the new stadium?" I'm like, "No." He was like, "Andre, you want to give him a tour?" So he takes me on a tour of everything new in the stadium. He gets me back to Daryl. He tells Daryl to take me up to
Wow.
the press box. So we go up to the press box. We hang out in the press box for a long time. Come back down. Coach Fedora's like, "If you ever need anything, just let me know." So I ended up keeping in touch with them a pretty good amount. So that was kind of it. And I haven't met Mac. So I'm hoping that everything's the same as it was when Fedora was there.
Yeah.
But I haven't been there in not such a long time, but I haven't been around everybody in such a long time that I'm not 100% sure like what it's going to be. It's not going to be like, I'm hoping that it's not going to be like Butch, hoping it's going to be a little bit more open, like the guys who have the UNC background and makes it feel like a family.
Sure.
I think that's how it'll be. Now, what I find interesting about your comments is how it's different for everybody depending on who you played for when you were there. And I think from talking to guys like Denard Cersei and Hakeem and all those guys, I know guys that were after you or a little bit after you, Mac has welcomed everybody in a lot and sort of made it more of a family. And I've heard, and I don't want to get into talking about, about people that are gone, but I've heard a lot of similar stories that you've had, and that's unfortunate. And I believe that's why Mac Brown's trying to get it back to be the more family atmosphere or whatever, and really pushing, like we talked about, the 40 club stuff. And so I appreciate you sharing those stories. I mean, I think people need to hear them and see, because all that speaks to where this program, how rough it's been around this program for many, many years. And maybe since Mac was here last. And so maybe that'll change. I hope you can get up to Chapel Hill. It stinks we can't watch games in person and everybody can visit. But before I forget, and we still want to talk about some Carolina times because you had some great memories. But I said I was going to ask you this. I need to know if I'm getting the 2002, the 5 year ago Cam Newton, or am I getting last year's Cam Newton on my fantasy football team?
Well, that's a good question.
Come on, man. This is
for those of you listening and watching, if we haven't let the cat out of the bag yet, Ronnie has been a scout for the New England Patriots for many, many years since he left Chapel Hill. And, of course, my esteemed co-host here jumps in. The first thing we want to ask when we get is about his fantasy team. And the best part was, Ronnie, you said you got that question how many times today?
I've gotten it 6 today.
Wow. So a lot of people – so let me ask this. Are people selling or buying?
They are buying. Everybody's buying Cam Newton right now.
Okay.
I can squash it if I wanted to, or I can just let it live. I am going the Bill Belichick route, and I'm telling you, I don't know.
I'm not going to push it.
He's spoken like a man who's been in that program for a while, isn't it?
I got it. I know how to play it now.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. Tommy, you cool to go to the Patriot stuff, or do you want to get more about your fantasy team?
No, we can talk. I want to know how excited – I know how excited college players are to play. How excited are grown men to play pro football? What is that like in that locker room?
It's hit or miss. And it depends on what organization you're with. I think our organization, the players normally come here, they love football, so they all get excited to play. It's not always like that with everybody. I've found that some of the guys are just so talented that they would be stupid not to take the money and play, but it's not a love for the game. And those players do not hang around New England very often. So I don't see very many guys who aren't excited to go out and play just because that's not how the organization was built. That's not how Bill created that football environment.
You got to love it to play for the Patriots.
You have to love it. It's a grind up there. And that's everywhere. That's from once you get into the football side, so the coaches, players, personnel, like it's a grind. And if you don't have a passion for it, then it'll wear you out really quickly.
Talk about that a little bit, if you can elaborate for us. I mean, everything that anybody's ever heard of since Belichick got to New England was about what a winning culture it is and how it is very much, this is our number one goal, and it seeps through every single part of that organization's DNA. When you were in Chapel Hill, there wasn't really that sort of winning, and again, I don't want to take you too far back to your high school days, but what's different about that culture versus anywhere else that you've been a part of?
Egos get squashed really quickly up here. It's not that he's intentionally just trying to squash egos. He's just the way that he built the program from when he first got here is the players basically set the culture now. So he doesn't have to come in and say, hey, all we want to do is win. Now we have players that's all they think of. In high school, you had the distractions of high school, going to classes, trying to be the cool kids, trying to look good for the high school girls. And you get to college, you got the same thing, but you got a bigger name and a bigger platform, so guys take advantage of that stuff more. Once you get to New England, all the other stuff doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is winning. And if you're not trying to win, then you don't really have a place in the organization. So you have to put any egotistical type things, mindsets that you bring in, that stuff gets squashed really quickly. And it kind of it weeds out the people who actually are there to win, and their main purpose is to win. And I found that out early when I was there.
Go ahead and give us an example. It doesn't have to be you. It can be somebody else, or you can protect the names for those who need to be protected. But give me a time and example.
Well, with me, it was, I was young. Came from a good college and everything, and I thought I knew everything, and I thought I was supposed to be somewhere in my career where I wasn't at a certain point, and had to sit down, and it wasn't with Bill, but it was with my boss, Nick Casario, and basically said, listen, that's not how this organization is. There's a lot of people who want to get in these doors, and there's a lot of people who want to be in your shoes. So you can either, do it the right way, the way that we want it, and do it the correct way, or we just find somebody else that can do it for you. And it's really simple. I mean, we've had players like Albert Haynesworth. Like last year, we had Michael Bennett last year, and it was the same thing. We could get players who are like Pro Bowlers and all this stuff, but it doesn't. At the end of the day, that doesn't really matter if you're not doing if you're not putting team first and you're not doing what the team wants. You can be gone, and it's like that at every point of the football side, which I think is absolutely amazing. Because I've talked to scouts, I've talked to coaches, and I've talked to players from different organizations who have more laid back environments. But once they say they get in there, and there's like the camaraderie that you build in college, you would think that it would be the same in some of those locker rooms that have all the freedom. But the people said it's not. They said it's more cliquey. Like the top dollar players, they hang out with the top dollar players. The But in our locker room, it just seems different. Like everybody is kind of on equal playing ground, or equal playing field. So you have very random friendships that get built in our organization. It's extremely authentic, and it's weird to see it sometimes. And I don't know if you know very much about our players, but Matt Slater he's been a captain since I got up there, or one of the captains since I got up there. He's been there since 2010, I think. Very, very, like, doesn't cuss, or if he does cuss, he cusses very little. He's been the leader of the team for years. He gives all of the pep talks, all of the speeches. His roommate for a whole bunch of years was Julian Edelman, who they seem like totally different people, but they absolutely loved living together. Like they stayed together in a house in Foxborough. And I told somebody, I was like, yeah, Julian and Slater, they lived together. They've lived together for like 5 years, even after they both got contracts. And they were like, wow, that's weird. They don't seem like they would hang out together. I was like, yeah, I know. It's just how it is. Like you get quarterbacks hanging out with the DBs hanging out with the linemen. Like it's more cohesive and, like you said, authentic. I think the way that this locker room is, I don't think it's a bunch of backstabbing and stuff. Even on the coaches, personnel, like I think it's just all the way through. You get what you see, not what you like. You don't get something that you think is real, and then you find out through the media that it was all fake.
So how much of that is a function of winning? I mean, you can have a coach come in and try to change the culture or whatever. If he hadn't won squat, he's not going to get buy-in from college kids, much less guys making millions of dollars.
Right.
So how much does Belichick and his crowd and you guys get respect? Because you can always say, you see that right there? That's what we do works. You know,
that doesn't. Yeah, that doesn't work for everybody though. Like we can't get every player just because we start flashing rings at them. Some players still don't want that. They still don't want the discipline, the accountability. They still like they would still prefer to get the money and have the fun. Like
so it really is that motivational piece. Like it's how they're wired.
Yes,
is what I'm hearing you say.
100%. And when he first got here, it's not like he came and he was a winning coach. Mm-hmm. It's just, I think he just instilled it in the players, and it just carries. I think it just carries through.
It's fascinating because, yeah, even when you get to that level of football, some guys are just in it for the money, and there's a lot of money. I certainly understand that, but you know, then you got guys that'll sacrifice some money to win.
And winning a Super Bowl ring as a scout, and I cannot even imagine what it was like as a player, is one of the best feelings in the world. And you get it to do it. Some of these teams, they win one and they're like, oh, you know, like, I'm happy if we win another one. Great. We won that first Super Bowl, and I remember walking through the locker room and everybody was so excited. And then we do the parade, and then we have a day where the players are doing the exit interviews. And I remember all the players like, all right, time to get to work and win another one. We lost the Super Bowl, right. And the very next day, there are players players in there working out. It's like, all right, we lost it. We got to win the next one. And they don't think of, most of our players, you don't think about winning the Super Bowl, but that's the ultimate goal, is to win the Super Bowl. And we've had players say, if you're not trying to win the Super Bowl, then what are you here for? Like, what are you playing for?
So
go ahead.
No, I was going to ask the dumb question. So how many rings do you actually have, Ronnie?
I got 3 Super Bowl rings and 2 participation rings, which I was told those don't count, but I still count them.
You got to the party.
Got to the party, but didn't quite finish the job.
So I don't God, we could have a great off the record. But how does a guy like Antonio Brown get brought in? Given what we've talked about now, granted, all I know about him is what I see in the media. Most people are genuinely very different from that, but it didn't work out. So how does that happen?
I think the perception is a little bit wrong about Coach Belichick, and I don't want to speak for him because that's one of the things that we do. You don't speak for somebody else; you let them speak for themselves. But I want to take up for him because I think the perception is that he does not like people who do not act the way that he wants them to act, which is true for most people. I mean, you don't want somebody in your house that's not going to follow your house rules.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of the thing. But his main goal is, once you're in that building, if you can respect the way that the Patriots organization is ran, then you have a chance. And if you get some players that screwed up off the field, but he lets you know, like, same way he let us know, like, what you do off the field is a representation of the Patriots. But as long as you do it in a respectful manner and handle your business in a respectful way, then we'll give you an opportunity. So that's kind of how Antonio got in.
So he gives you an opportunity until you give him a reason not to give you an opportunity.
Yes. He's the same with every person that I've seen, from the lowest person on our side. So like I said, the football operations, the personnel, coaching, and players, the lowest person is a scouting assistant, and that person gets the same fairness as Tom Brady would get. You do a good job, you don't get a pat on the back, you get a good job, now that's your standard. Basically, you got to keep performing to that standard. If you don't do a good job, then you will definitely hear about it.
As you should.
I want to ask one more NFL question, if that's cool, before we get back to
go ahead. It's fascinating. It sounds kind of like how Dean Smith ran his program.
It's basketball. I was getting ready to get to that. Like, I think there's a lot of similarity in kind of the standard or the expectations that coaches set, just hearing Ronnie sit here and talk about Belichick. Ronnie, I'm going to ask you kind of this may seem like a very low-hanging fruit question, but I think for some of our listeners and viewers that may not know, what does your day or week as a scout look like? Like, what do you actually do for the Patriots?
Well, right now I'm working from home. I will be back in the building Saturday, and then that is when the fun starts. So I get in every morning. Before COVID, I was getting in 6 o'clock. Maybe get a little bit of a workout in, start my day. And we basically have, so there's two sides to personnel. There's two different types of scouts. There's the college scouts and pro scouts. The college scouts are the guys who, they live on the road. If you have a guy in the Southeast who covers all of the Carolinas, Florida, Georgia, those areas, then he probably lives down there somewhere. So that guy's day and year is totally different than mine. Mm-hmm. I go into the office every day, and it starts early in the morning. And I have 8 teams that I'm responsible for. So if you play one of those teams, then my day is totally different than if we don't play that team. So when we play one of the teams that I have, I start off my day by coming in, reading up on the team, listening to interviews, just all types of good stuff, trying to get some information. And then I spend a week watching and writing reports on all these guys. And then after that, I put this package together for the coaches that ends up being about 50 pages. And then after that, normally in a normal year, I would travel to the game. So if we're playing Miami on Sunday, but if we actually played Miami in week 2 and I had Miami, I would go watch Miami play week 1 and then come back. And that's really when the coaches are onto the team that I'm covering. So then through the whole week, I'm basically just keeping the coaches updated with everything that happens with Miami. So an injury happens, let them know. Anything that that might involve the game, just let them know.
Right.
And I just basically keep track all the way through game week. And then once the game happens, I watch and hope we win. So they give me some kind of credit for it or something. and hope everything that I said is true, because if it's not true, then I'll definitely hear about it the Monday afterwards. So,
Yeah, you're gonna like that. Run heavy, and then they throw it 60 times. You're like,
That's it. Yeah, it actually does happen sometimes. It is rare that it's like something major that everybody notices. Is always something really small, like a tight end, a line,
gadget play.
Yeah, or it's just something very random. And I kept telling, it was like 4 years ago, I think it was, teams would not signal before they played us for obvious, I mean, not
for some
obvious
reasons,
but yeah, for some reasons. So they would not signal before they played us, and I kept telling the coach, I was like, "Listen, man, I've watched them for like a couple games and not signaling." And then, sure enough, every time we played, they would signal. And I
thought you were making it up the whole time.
I would always have to explain. I was like, "Listen, I'm not kidding. Like, I'm going to these games." And finally, another one of the scouts said the same thing. He's like, "It's weird." He's like, "Team not signaling," and all of a sudden they just start signaling. Like, whatever. So,
that's great
yeah.
stories. So how compare, and we did, and Cersei talked about this a little bit. Compare the difference in preparation for college versus pro, from your perspective.
Oh, it is it's a different ball game, because as I always tell the rookies, like, they come in and they're kind of used to the college setup where football, you're a student athlete, but you're an athlete student. Like, football is still priority number one, but you still have classes, you still have study hall, you still have all that other stuff. So your your football study can get a little behind. In the NFL, you are getting paid to be the best possible player that you can be, and the way that you prepare is part of that. You can normally tell, like, the guys and the coaches who aren't as worried about that as the ones who are. So from my side, I'm not going to say it from Cersei's side or the player side, because I'm not a player, so I can't really speak on that. But there's so much that goes into our side preparing for games, which I don't think the players really know it. Like, Coach Belichick he has to be a week ahead, because once the game's over, they're short weeks, so he has to be ready for the next week. Our stuff is 2 weeks ahead, and we have to kind of be 3 weeks ahead. And we worry about not just the players in this, or not just the scheme, but the players within the scheme. In college, I remember when we were game planning, it was just, this is what they do, this is what they don't do, these are some of the players that we worry about.
Then go play.
In the NFL, you worry about this player, this is his role, this is what he does, this is what he doesn't do. If they go in this situation, this is the player, this is what he does, this is what they do. If it's this player plus this player, this is what they do. So it's way more mental than I thought it was gonna be. Like mental starts taking over the physical, because everybody in the league's fast. Everybody in the league's pretty strong.
Everybody's getting paid. Right.
Everybody's getting paid. You might not be getting paid the same amount, but everybody's getting paid to do a job. The stuff that I think that some players don't realize is you're getting paid that other stuff, like the knowing the breakdowns of the team, knowing the skill sets of the players, knowing what the keys are, making sure that you're locked in on all of the keys. And you got to be so locked in for that whole week. And then it's just a quick turnaround, because the coaches do a lot of the studying, but they're busy now too, because that's literally their job, is to always be studying this film and to always be worrying. They're not worrying about recruiting. They're not going out and doing any of that stuff. So their main focus is to trying to get ready for the team. So when they give you the information and they start moving on to the next team, because they have such a short time to worry about it, they're expecting the players to take what they give them and what we give them and prepare themselves as well.
How much coaching's done on Sunday?
I don't know about other teams, but the Patriots is a lot, and there's a ton during the week. Like I don't know. I don't know if I can handle it if I was playing. It's just
right.
it's so much stuff.
But they always talk about, you go play on game day. We coach you up before, but let me ask one question, and it's clearly not coming from a place of fandom, because this guy we've got a bunch of Northeast people that live near us, and they all love the Patriots, and the Patriots seem to always win. So everybody hates the Patriots if you're not a Patriots fan. But my question is this: how was it like to be around a guy like Tom Brady? And I know that's a low hanging fruit question or whatever, but I mean, the dude is one of the greatest.
It was weird. It was really weird when I first met him, because he was a lot nicer than what I was expecting.
And there you go, because he looks like he could be a little bit aloof, and he probably has valid reasons to be that way.
He's extremely competitive. That's what I did find out. I did figure out about him. He wants to win every single play of the year, from practice number 1 all the way through the end of the season. So that was kind of the thing that struck me as crazy, or not as crazy, but as like, I didn't realize that. Like, you know that he's competitive, but he is uber competitive. It is it is crazy. Like we had a blue and white scrimmage the year that he got suspended for the first 4 games, and because he wasn't gonna be starting, he was taking reps with the number 2s, and they decided to take Gronk away from him so he couldn't throw the ball to Gronk. And Jimmy was the quarterback for the other team, and I think they were up. Tom's team was up 24-7 at half or something like that. And mind you, this is just a regular squad scrimmage. The players are in the corner, and the coaches are talking to them just about like what they're doing and what they're not doing right. Tom's not with them. He walks over there, and he looks like he is as mad as can be. He looks like it's the Super Bowl, and he says, "We're only up by 3 scores. Now it's time to put our foot on the necks and finish this thing." It's like
nothing on the line, right?
It's like
this is inner squad, man.
And I was like, that guy is, man,
that's a different breed,
he's
man.
Competitive.
Well, that's how all the GOATs, aren't they? That's how Jordan is. And Jordan was.
Kobe is the same way. We met Kobe last year. He came into the stadium. That's another thing. Bill really likes, like you said, he will branch out different ways to get like perspectives of winning.
It helps motivate too, right? You're learning how the different geniuses that have that competitive gene, like he probably is smart enough to figure out a way to take stuff from them. Yeah.
And then it just seems like he really enjoys that type of stuff. So we got Kobe in, and it's about the same as Tom. He was as competitive as can be on the basketball.
Yeah, I don't think people realize that. I don't think people realize the level of competitive. It's like everybody wants to win, right? There's a different level, and people do not grasp it unless you have opportunities like yourself to be around it and see it up close.
Kobe told us the story. We were like, how do you handle new players coming into the building, or new good players? It was like, you and Ron Artest were completely different, and we were calling him Artest, not Meta World Peace. His story was, when they signed Ron, I think it was a day off or something, and Ron was in there practicing when he walks in, when Kobe gets there. And Kobe walks in, and Ron Artest is like, "Hey man, it's 6:00. It's the day off. Like, why are you here?" He was like, "Because I knew you were gonna be here. Like, you can't be here and I'm not here. It's like you can't get better and I'm not getting better." He was like, "That's just not gonna happen." So he said Ron Artest was kind of joking and stuff, and he said, "Listen, we brought you in here to win. If you want to do that, then we're gonna be friends. But if you don't want to win, then you're going to hate me." That was it.
That's
And
it.
he said after that, Ron Artest was like, okay, well, guess that's what it is.
The
And
funny thing is that Artest played with Jordan too. So like that's the guy that he's played with both of the GOATs, right?
Yep.
God.
That's how you get somebody like Pippen, or not Pippen, Dennis Rodman to ball out and win
And buy
rings.
in. Yeah.
Yep.
Because those guys, yep.
Yeah, if you get them around the right people, and not the coaches, but around the right people, then you can really see where that competitiveness is going to be. Tom's competitiveness would if you either followed him or you didn't, and if you didn't, you were one of the few people who didn't. So you got left way behind. So you can it definitely does bring it out of people.
So Ronnie, I want to try to be respectful of your time, and I appreciate you giving us the time that you've given us today. Let's kind of refocus towards the present, I guess, of what's happening in Chapel Hill. What do you think about the current state of the program? I mean, you were a guy that played in between MAC 1.0 and then the current, edition that we've got. What do you think, as a former player, but now a guy that doesn't have a ton of time to watch college football, but what are your thoughts about where the program is right now, where it's headed?
Love it. Absolutely love it. So my sister said she was like, everybody who goes to Chapel Hill just becomes like this Chapel Hill nut. Like you can't get it out of you. I was like, that's 100% correct. So when I graduated, I actually came back to Chapel Hill for a little bit, and then I ended up leaving again, got the job at the Titans. Since I left, every Saturday I wear a different UNC shirt. And everybody around me just knows that it's going to happen. So during those rough years, it was quite tough with those shirts because I took a lot of crap.
Right.
But the last year was, I was like on cloud nine because Sam when Sam signed and they were like, oh, this freshman's supposed to start, and I was going around, I was telling people, it's like, oh wait, like, I've been hearing so much good stuff about him. Like he's gonna be so amazing. He's gonna rip it up. I was like, wait till he gets in there. Just wait till he gets in there. And everybody was kind of doubting it.
Sure.
And then now, by the end of the season, everybody was like, yeah, you know what, man, I might pick UNC this week. So it's been really good for me. I have a UNC sticker on my door. I have a UNC helmet. Jersey or something in my locker, UNC football in my locker. I have a UNC ring in my locker. I have my diploma not in my locker, in my office. I have my diploma in my office. And on my name tag outside my door, I have the state of North Carolina. It's Carolina blue. It has a Tar Heel.
There you go.
Where Chapel Hill is. Like, it's like, I've been riding really high these last 2 years.
They're like, you're that guy. He's like, oh, God.
I'm that guy. I probably get on people's nerves talking about Chapel Hill.
Last question, and we'll let you get out of here because we've held you for a long time. But you played in Chapel Hill when it was a little rough time as far as wins and losses. Some big moments. You had a fair amount of injuries those middle 2 years. But how do you remember that time? If you can look back at your younger self, how do you remember that time? And then how do you want Carolina fans to sort of like remember you? Because there's quite a few fans that have tried to block those years out. And I don't think you can block any bad years out and then appreciate the good years. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. Sometimes it's a little, because people ask me, like, people who I don't know, they ask me where I went to school, and I tell them I played at Carolina, the real Carolina, and they're like, oh, what years did you play for Mac? And I'm like, no. And they're like, did you play for Butch? I'm like, no, I played for Coach Button. Like, we didn't win very much, but I absolutely loved the experience. One, Coach Button was, I still talk to Coach Button. I go see him every summer. I go stay at his
That's awesome.
lake house up in Maine. I tell him, like, it was rough, but I don't think I would change it for the world. It's like somebody asked me if I could go back, would I go to a different school? It's like maybe to win a couple more games, but at the end, I don't think like, I don't think that really mattered to me at that stage in my life. And I know thinking back on it, it still wouldn't change because some of my best friends are people from Chapel Hill. I love the experience there. Not winning did suck, but like the experience that I had there was unmatched. And we were actually able to be student athletes. Like Coach Button wanted us to win, but he also wanted us to really appreciate UNC because he went there. So he had that family value to it.
Yeah.
I also think that the discipline that he tried to instill in us has carried through. And that's something I didn't really appreciate what him and Coach Holiday, Coach Webster, and all those coaches were doing back then. But then once I was a senior, like I really, really it really hit me. We had some issues with Coach when I was a freshman. And for his exit interview to have as many players as that was there, to see him get carried off the field against State, seeing players cry when he told us he was fired, like all that stuff, that probably means more to me now than winning a couple more games, because it was just, I think some guys go to some of these bigger schools, or not bigger schools, but like some of those schools that were just predominantly football winning teams, and they have a love for the school because they played there and they won games. But I don't see them going back there just to hang out and, walk around the grounds that they used to walk around, unless they want to get a pat on the back because somebody recognizes them.
Right.
And as for me, I just, when I think, I hope people remember me as, one, always smiling, never mad. And I told everybody I gave UNC everything I had on the field. I gave them both my shoulders, my hips, my knees.
Physically, yeah.
I hope people remember that. And as a physical runner, that was really the thing that I always wanted people to know, that I was just, if it was a yard, I was going to go get that yard, regardless of how many people were in front of me. And I would give anything up to get that yard. That's all I wanted to do. I just want people to remember me as one of the running backs who actually just left it all out there.
Man, that is what this 40 Club podcast is all about right there, Ronnie. The last few minutes there, you talking about Carolina, what you gave and how you want to be thought of. It's we've talked to a lot of folks doing this stuff. I've talked to a ton of former guys over the years, and rarely do I come away with, and I'm not blowing smoke, but rarely do I come away with this guy gets it, right? Yeah. This guy 100% gets what it means to be a Tar Heel, and I think you pretty much laid it out right there, front and center for everybody here. And I appreciate you taking time to join it. And you're right. You always smile.
My daughter just woke up. I can hear in the other room.
Well, and look, we've had more babies on this show than anybody. But I just want to say I appreciate it. Appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Yeah,
man. I'm glad y'all had me on here.
Yeah. I'm gonna wrap the show. I'm gonna wrap the show right fast. It's the Inside Carolina podcast, sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt, JohnnyT-Shirt.com. You've been listening to Joey Powell, Tommy Ashley, and Ronnie McGill. Bring her on. Get your babies on.
Go give her the cameo, man.
Girl, what are you doing? She's at the store.
Look at there.
That she's a future Tar Heel unless she gets a scholarship somewhere else. If she goes to UNC, I told her I'll pay for it.
See, look at there.
She can't go to Raleigh. She can't go to NC State. How you doing?
She cannot go there.
Well, again, appreciate it. I'm gonna wrap this one, and then we're gonna talk for just one more second. But I appreciate you doing it, Joey Powell. Appreciate you getting Ronnie on. It's been great. Rate us, review us, iTunes, Spotify, all that stuff. Subscribe on YouTube. It's worth it. Everybody take it easy. Many thanks to Ronnie McGill for joining us on the 40 Club podcast. Before we get any deeper into the show, I want to take time to talk about Johnny T-Shirt and Johnny T-Shirt. .com right fast. Of course, Inside Carolina sponsors of this wonderful podcast, and locally owned and operated right there on Franklin Street. You need to support the local guys. They're the ones who keep Carolina and keep Chapel Hill what it is. Like Ronnie McGill talked about, Chapel Hill is a special place. Businesses like Johnny T-Shirt make it that way. Inside Carolina premium subscribers, of course, get 10% off every order, and they're constantly having sales. Carolina gear, Carolina football gear. Football season is upon us. You can't go to the games yet, but you can tailgate in your driveway, and you need the Carolina gear, and they've got everything you need.
Does Johnny T-Shirt have a blue fire truck?
Do they have one?
If not, I bet they could get one.
I bet you we could get a Johnny T-Shirt sticker on a blue fire truck if we tried hard enough.
All of the above. But yeah, man, I think Johnny T-Shirt.
Oh, you talking about for children? Yeah, I'm not think they do. But look,
I feel like they could.
Google is your friend.
Ronnie said that's what made him come to Chapel Hill. And I'm thinking, all the people that get stuff from Johnny T because they have so much. Surely they have a Carolina blue fire truck, and if not, I bet they could get one.
So as we wrap this show, and Joey talking about Ronnie, and many thanks for him coming on this podcast. I know you worked that out with Patriots PR. Their season starts, and by the time you guys listen to this podcast, it'll be a week after we recorded. We recorded on, I guess it's September 10th.
Yeah.
So he is literally walking up to the doorstep of the NFL season starting, and he took time to join the Inside Carolina podcast. What a great guy, though. I mean, he said it at the end there. He's always smiling, and rarely is somebody always smiling, but is always really happy. And I think he seems to be one of the happier people I've ever met.
The funny thing is my recollection of him as a player was that the dude was always seemed to be smiling, always seemed to be jovial, always seemed to be upbeat. And, when you're playing your senior year on a team that's getting skull dragged right and left for a coach that got fired midway through the season,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that says a lot about your character as a person. And just to your point, like, God just seems to enjoy life. And, he's turned that into a really long career with the Patriots. I thought it was really cool. And I think you asked him some really good questions about that. But I thought it was really cool to hear him just talk about how unique and really DNA embedded the culture of winning is there, and just like the whole thing around, because you always read it, right? We've all read it. Like you said, we get what the media feeds us, but to hear it from somebody inside of there and him be really unfiltered about it, I thought that was cool.
Yeah, it definitely was. And look, I didn't say it to him, but I probably should have. I'm not a Patriots fan and never have been. But part of the problem with the Patriots is they always seem to be winning.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's relevant to Carolina. It's relevant to a school down the road. I mean, people don't like teams that consistently win, but there is a reason, whether it's the Patriots or Carolina, especially on the basketball court, win. It's because it is ingrained. And to hear him talk about that, and when you're dealing with people that make millions of dollars, and some are in it for the money, yet some are in it for winning. It's fascinating to hear him talk about it from an insider's perspective. All we do is watch pro sports on TV. We got a glimpse into the window of one of the best programs in sport,
and has been for well over a decade. I think something else that he mentioned too, and I didn't want to belabor it while we had Ronnie here, but I think the fan perception, and I'm painting with generalization paintbrushes here. I get that, but I think the fan perception about Butch was that he was like the benevolent leader, and that Larry Fedora maybe sometimes was too detached and was kind of aloof a little bit. But Ronnie's story about his experience with those guys was the exact opposite.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's, again, to your point that you said while we were talking to him, it's weird when you hear what actual people's individual experience has been and how it might paint a little different color on what you think you knew about something.
Absolutely. I mean, we're all human beings, and everybody's different. But not only that, perception is not always the same. Even if you have a certain perception, two different people can have a different perception, but two different people can also have a very different reality in dealing with certain people. And look, I've heard the stories he's talking about. I've heard the stories that Larry Fedora was was, not interested in having the family together and all that stuff. And I've heard Butch, but to hear it from a guy that was in it, and he's right. I think there may be sometimes two different levels of interest in former guys. I do not think it's like that now. And that's what we talked about there, talking about Mac Brown.
That's the beauty of it, right?
Yeah. And that, but for Carolina fans listening to this, you just assume that just because somebody played at Carolina, they played a sport at Carolina, that it's a big family, big happy family. And it's not that way.
Yeah.
It makes Carolina basketball's family for the most part. It's not 100% even there, but to realize how that has been a thing, that every former Carolina player on the basketball side feels like they're part of that. Basketball has been able to do it, but football's got a ways to go. Mac Brown's doing his best to get it done.
You know what it made me think about too when he was telling those stories about, Corey Holiday and Rick Steinbacher. I think people have their opinions about Corey and Rick, and I think, I've always had good experiences interacting with them, but, people have their own opinions. But it also makes you wonder, what kind of shambles would the football Carolina family be in without some stalwarts like that have been around the whole time to keep to extend a hand literally and figuratively to a guy like Ronnie McGill, who, again, like he said, gave his body to this university during some seasons that weren't great for 4 years. And then, a matter of months later, he's not even recognized by the new staff. I mean, it makes you wonder what the dynamic between those different administrations would be were it not for some guys like Corey Holiday and Rick Steinbacher.
Yep. I mean, Carolina is a unique place in that you have those type situations, and yeah, it's good and bad, and it may be different in different places, but to have those ties it's always nice to be able to see somebody you recognize, right? Whether it's us
Familiar
walking
face.
around. Yeah. And it always makes it welcoming. One last thing before we get out of here is one thing that I really heard in that podcast, and this is what people forget too, and I'm not preaching, but it's something that all of us really forget, is to hear him talk about John Bunning and hear how that all went down. Now, there's not a person listening to this podcast that doesn't think Bunning needed to be let go when he was let go. In fact, I'd wager 75% of the people listening think he needed to be let go way before that.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily disagree, but still, McGill humanized it and humanized the experience from a guy who played for the man. And we forget that as a society, that, I hear all the time, just play. I don't want to hear your politics. Just play. I don't want to hear about your problems. Just play. These folks it's real life.
We're humans, man.
Yep.
At the end of the day, we're all humans.
And I thought Ronnie really, really illustrated that from a guy that, like you said, gave both shoulders, a couple knees, and probably got a win per injury.
Yeah.
And he
That's
has
a terrible stat to keep, but I think you're right.
And he has no regrets. I mean, it's a great one of my favorite to do. I love these 40 Club podcasts, to hearing these old stories. You just can't, you don't know what it's like unless you're in it. And I think these podcasts allow us and allow our listeners and watchers to get in it a little bit.
Hope so. That's, one of the things that you and I've always said is that, these guys can tell the story better than any of us ever could. And so hopefully we're giving them a platform to do that, an avenue for our listeners and subscribers to hear it.
Yep, indeed. It's been the 40 Club Podcast. I'm Tommy Ashley. That's Joey Powell. Johnny T-shirt, the sponsor. Rate us, review us. We say it all the time. It's important that you take time to rate us and review us on iTunes or however you get your podcast, and subscribe on this YouTube channel. Look, there's probably 30 or 40 videos of the weeks leading up to games here on this Inside Carolina channel. You subscribe and it comes right to your doorstep, right to your inbox almost. Do it. We'll talk to you again soon. Thanks, Joey.
Yeah, man. See y'all.